Welcome to the Yoga Connection with Zorananda. The Yoga Connection is a deep dive into everything yoga. Follow along with Zorananda and his guests as they discuss yoga history, spirituality, different practices, and the many misconceptions that have followed along throughout the years of yogic tradition. Hello and welcome to the Yoga Connection. My name is Zorananda, and I have the pleasure of being in person with an amazing woman. Her name is Shakti Jiwan Kaur. She's a yogini, and more importantly, she is a relationship life coach, particularly in the realm of step family and step motherhood. And she plays a beautiful role in allowing people to see who they are in their relationship, the relationship to their partner or lack of partner, and the relationship to their children and stepchildren, and how they can be empowered to play that role in the healthiest way they can, and also to be encouraged that they're not alone in this world, and that there's someone like Shakti to guide and enlighten them on their journey in their step family and familyhood in general. So, hello, welcome.
That was the best introduction I've ever had. Thank you.
I just thought of it.
That was fantastic. I can't even top it.
I find myself... It's interesting having these kind of conversations in a podcast like format. So I try to remind myself that not to really change my voice and to talk as if we're just having a conversation. But what I love about having a platform in podcasting, it's like it puts me into this way of thinking that is just like so spontaneous and so smooth, and I feel like I have a good knack for it. And so it encourages me to be my best self, you know, and to also hype up the person that I'm talking about, right? Or talking to. And so this is going to be fun. And we're in your home, and it's a beautiful home.
Thank you.
Yeah. So set and setting is place. And yeah, so who are you? What do you do?
I am Shakti Jiwan, also commonly known as the Step Queen, also previously known as Brittany Lynch. And I am someone who dreams of a world where there is no violence or hatred or separation. And I find that our family is supposed to be the place where we feel the most safe and held and supported. And unfortunately for so many of us, our experience of family is not that.
Yeah, I think it's important in this era, because we have the internet, because we have social media, and now we have access to so much information, to be willing to learn new skills and new ways of raising each other, right? Because we're both from the same generation, you know, we're like in our mid-30s. And so I remember a time before social media, before the internet, and where abuse was just normalized, right? Because the amount of information that was out there came from what, right? It came from TV shows or books, and it didn't really come from this medium where you can have a portal into just normal people's lives, right? We're watching TV and we're watching scripted stuff, right? We're watching fabricated stuff of what we think a family should look like, Family Matters and Home Improvement and yada, 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 right? And so I think it's like courageous to take up the mantle of what you're doing, right? Of like stepping forward and being like recognizing the step family is there's and maybe this is just my naivety or my lack of knowledge, but it's like that maybe there isn't enough being done. Is that like how you felt going into it?
That's a great question. I would go so far as to say back like in our generation in the 90s when we were being raised, the parenting paradigm was just, this is the way that it's always been done, right? This is the way my parents did it. This is the way your grandma did it. This is the way this, that, the other thing. And I would say really, really kind of more conscious parenting or more intentional choices in how we even look for information on how to bring a family together. I would argue that that's kind of more recent. Other than that, it just is inherited. It's just like passed down through your lineage. Like this is how my mom parented, so this is how I'm going to parent. And when I became a stepmom almost 10 years ago, I wasn't able to fall into the unconscious patterns. In other words, I couldn't parent the way that my mom and grandma and great grandma parented because my experience with raising children was this child whose life I'm a part of, he's not my own. And so I can't get away with the kinds of things that a biological parent could get away with. Right? So for instance, many of us who grew up in the 90s were spanked, right?
Yeah.
And that just because that was the common experience doesn't mean that that is the right thing to do.
Yeah.
So the contrast of the way I thought parenting was supposed to be done and the way that I had to stop myself from just impulsively doing what I thought a parent would do, created enough separation and space in this pocket where parenting would just be kind of like done automatically. It created this pocket where I had to pause and be like, oh, okay, wait a minute. Just because I got spanked, right? Is that actually the right thing to do? Just because I got put in a corner, just because kids get, their privileges taken away, just because kids get their doors taken off their hinges, whatever. And this isn't meant to point fingers at any parenting style or any parenting decisions or whatever. The way that I got into this work, however, was because I couldn't just do what everybody else was doing without giving it a thought. So I was invited into this space where I had to consider what is actually the right thing to do in this instance. And so for a lot of step families, I find we are kind of being called to a different level of awareness in our families because we have to ask ourselves the question, what is the right thing to do in this situation? We can't just fall into the way that it's always been done because there's a different dynamic. So it creates a lot more, I would say, like a little bit more kind of chaos because people have to look at themselves differently and look at their relationships differently. So it creates a little more wobble. And at the same time, evolution in that wobble because people are invited to consider, is this the way I want my family to look? Is this the way I want to show up in my family? Is this the way I want to raise kids? Who do I want to be here? Who do I want to be in this family?
Yeah, it's interesting because it's like through the generations, each set of parenting can't help but idealize that what they're doing is the best thing, like quote unquote best thing for their child, right? And it reminds me of that like meme of like, and it's like a drawing of like there's one set of parents that are like, and there's like a squiggly line and it's like a bubble, a speech bubble that's like, you're useless, and then it's being said to the kid, and that kid's a parent, and then it's like, you should know better, you should do better, and then it finally like goes to the last one where there's like a break, and it's like, then it's like after 3 generations there's the parent that breaks that cycle and tunes out what is this like generational trauma, and is like, I love you, and I accept you. And like, it's amazing that we have access to just like a simple picture that can point out precisely what can be done in this case, right? And just exactly what you're saying, like, as much as we want to look back and have like anger or have confusion or just like ill intent to our ancestors, right? I think the thing that helped me is to acknowledge that they were brought up with this ideal of they know the best for their children, and that's where that's coming from. But then to really do my part in deciding that it's my responsibility to bring healing to those generational traumas, and that like maybe my brother won't, maybe my sisters won't, and I don't have control over that. Like, I can tell them as much as I can. Like, I have a niece, like I don't have any kids, but I have a niece, and like I can tell Adam's wife Jess as much as I want to be like, don't yell at River like that, but it's not going to change anything, right? Because I'm not the authority. And I think that's kind of goes into like the step family thing, right? You have a partner that has kids, and then just because you're the new partner, right, of the other person's kids, you're not the authority. At least maybe not yet. And that I think that authority is more so earned than it is like granted, right? Because when you're a parent and you birthed that child, you brought that child into the world, you created it, you are the authority, right? And so to then be in a situation where you're not immediately granted that authority, you have to earn that authority, then I think there's so much value in having someone like you that says, this is how you earn that authority. This is how you step into the role as a more embodied step parent, so that that child can look at you and they feel that you deserve the respect. You deserve the attention.
And this is a really important distinction to make here, that I think that for a lot of people, the intention behind parenting is obedience. You want obedient children. You want them to do what you say when they say it. You don't want them to ask questions. You don't want them to push back, right? You want well-behaved kids. And so the kind of older parenting paradigm is, how do I raise obedient kids? And the way we raise obedient kids is through fear and shame and punishment. And so when I think of the word authority, what is tied in with that is fear and control, right?
Yeah.
Where in this new parenting paradigm, the respect comes from the level of respect that we treat our kids with. Because kids do what we do, not what we say. So if I'm going to be, I'll just use spanking because I used to be pro spanking, right? I used to be like, I was like, what do you mean you don't spank your kids? How do you make it do what you say? Right? And that was my exact phrase.
Yeah.
What do you mean you don't spank your kids? How do you make it do what you say? So dehumanizing, right?
Yeah.
Right. And And so if I'm going to say, don't hit your sister, and then spank my kid to teach them not to hit their sister, that doesn't make any sense from any way of looking at it. All that it is a reinforcement of the behavior you're trying to get them to not do, because your higher self knows we shouldn't hit each other, right? Your higher self knows don't hit each other. But the old parenting paradigm says, okay, well, make it do what you say. And this is how you make it do what you say, is you hit it so it gets scared and it doesn't do it again. But we know that that's not how it works. So if I want to teach my kid, don't hit your sister, I have to do that by not hitting anything.
Yeah, it reminds me. So there's this comedian, Louis C.K., and he has a bit about, I'm just trying to remember this, that there's a point when the child is going to do something that puts themselves in danger when they don't realize it, right? And that he is in the same realm of like not hitting your children and not like disciplining through spanking, but then there's a firmness when it's appropriate, when they're about to do something that is like clearly dangerous, and they do need like the recognition, like they need to be snapped into like, oh, I might have just hurt myself, right? And it's not in the realm of like they're being spanked, but like I wonder if like what you think on like in the moment of firmness, where it could be helpful or could be necessary for you as the adult to exercise your strength, not in a way that's like harming them, but it's signifying to them that without you there, they would have hurt themselves. Like, does that make sense?
I think what I'm hearing, I think the question I'm hearing, and correct me if I'm wrong, the question that I'm hearing is like, is it ever okay to assert force on your kids?
Yeah.
And in what circumstance is that?
Yeah, exactly.
Is that okay? Yeah. Okay. So let me be clear. I'm not a perfect parent. I still yell at my kids, right? Like I still lose my temper. I still have big anger. I still say things I don't mean to say. I still hurt them with my anger, right? I still do. I still spill my anger on my kids. So I'm not going to sit here and pretend that I'm a perfect parent and that I'm always emotionally regulated. And I'm not going to pretend that, because it's not the case.
Yeah.
And usually the times that I have the biggest reactions and the biggest responses is when I have the biggest amount of fear. And so sometimes that fear can come from a healthy place, like your kid is going to run out in traffic and I have fear, so I'm going to grab them and stop them.
Yeah.
And sometimes that fear can come from an old pattern where the fear response is not actually rational. So for instance, if my son slams a door, it's not a big deal.
Yeah.
Like slamming a door arguably is probably kind of a healthy expression of anger because it discharges some of that energy. But if I have a fear response patterned into my body because of loud noises or door slamming, or I have some kind of trauma tucked away somewhere that when people slam doors, this bad thing happens, subconsciously this triggers a fear response in me. So if I'm going to react the same way, if my kid is slamming a door as I am when they're running out in traffic, that's my work to do.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And I think it's good to make that distinction, right? That like to check in with yourself, that like say for that example, your kid slams a door, that if it's triggering something in you, that's going to cause you to react and have an outburst. I think just generally as an adult, we want to distinguish between like, how do I want to say it? Like what's appropriate or not, right? And for a kid slamming a door, like it doesn't matter if that's appropriate or not. Like the kid's going to learn that like as they get to become an adult, like, oh, it's just not appropriate for me to slam a door, but the kid's not really going to know better. So you can't really like it doesn't make sense to then respond to that by like abusing them, like running up to them, going to their door and like, you know, removing the door at like completely, or like yelling at them. Right. And because I would remember when I was a kid and I'd get into arguments with my parents because I want to get something and they don't want to buy it for me, or I want to go somewhere and they say no. And then like I have my meltdown and I run to my room and I slam my door. And I never had my dad or my mom run up after me and freak out on me because I slammed my door. They would just let me be. And then I would come down later and then my mom would be like, "Are you done?" You know? And I'd be like, yeah, you know? And so like, and I think, and I wonder if you would agree with this, that like leaving your kid be is like a way for them to figure out self-regulation. Like that's what thought came up to me in my mind. 'Cause when I think about when I was a child and like I'd run to my room and slam my door and cry on my bed, and I'd have this like mantra in my head of like, oh, my parents hate me and like they don't love me and like blah 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 blah. And then it's just like it's like a hamster on a wheel going so fast, and then over time it starts to slow down, and then it's like less significant. And then I would just kind of sit there by myself and I'd be like, I don't care anymore. Right? I just like it, and immediately it's like I'm self-regulating, and it's just because I'm given the space to do it.
Right. So I have a lot of things to say on this actually, because you really identified though what gets patterned. You're in there by yourself in your feelings. You're little, right? You're a baby.
Yeah.
You're a baby. The human brain doesn't finish developing until the age of 25. So the part of the brain responsible for logic and reasoning and emotional regulation and being able to understand other people's perspectives is not finished developing until the age of 25. So you have a 5 or 10-year-old kid who's by themselves in their feelings. You don't know what they are. You don't know. You don't know. So you feel terrible in your body. Your brain is dumping out all kinds of chemicals that make you feel terrible in your body. And then you are alone by yourself in this experience, learning when I have big feelings, nobody is there for me. So, and at the same time, sometimes as a parent, you need your kids to go the F away because you are doing everything in your power to stay emotionally regulated and not have a reaction that is going to create more damage. So there's this really fine balance, right? Where I want to be able to be there for my kids all the time when they're in their feelings, because I don't want them to be in their room by themselves, looping on the hamster wheel saying, my mom isn't there for me. My mom doesn't love me. My mom is not there, right? So my stance is that in these moments of meltdowns, the first thing I need to figure out for myself is, do I have the capacity to be able to go after him? Do I have the bandwidth to be able to stay regulated and go into this meltdown with him? Because if not, I'm not doing any good by going in there. I'm not providing any reassurance. I'm not providing more safety, right? But if I have enough, I can still go sit on the other side of his door and poke my head in and say, I'm right here with you, but we're both going to take a breath, but I'm here with you. You're not alone, right? And it doesn't matter how mad he is at me. It doesn't matter how much he doesn't want me to be there. He still is getting programmed and patterned with this, even when I'm having a meltdown, even when I tell my mom I hate her, even when all of these things happen, even when I have these big emotional experiences, she's still there with me. So then the story when he's there can be, I hate her, right? But it's not, I'm alone.
Yeah, because when I look back on, I have a particular memory where I was just like in my room crying and looping that, right? That like my family doesn't love me, they don't understand me, and all these things. That my way of coming out of it, was to come out of my room, go outside and play, run, release it that way, and then come back for dinner, and then to see that my mom is feeding us, right? And then it would switch something in my brain that I would be like, just in that simple act of my mom being there and cooking dinner and feeding us, that I was like, oh no, my mom like does love me, my parents do love me. But I like what you're saying, because like my parents wouldn't come and console me, right? Like I had sisters, so like my mom and my dad would be like, go deal with your brother, right? And so from what you said, like I like that approach where like you can show up and your child can still have their meltdown, but they know you're there present, right? Because I know that would have shifted things in me if I went to my room and my mom came up and knocked on the door and was like, I'm here, and that's it, right? That would have been so reassuring, because when you're a kid, it's like trying to remember that when my parents would show up, it's like so comforting, right? And so I just see so much value in that. And so now like looping to like the step parent, right? Like how different is it doing that for a stepchild? You know, like how different is it when you show up for your child and how they can like immediately feel comforted, as opposed to like showing up for a stepchild. Like, what does it take for them to have and know that trust that they're being comforted by someone who was a stranger at first, you know, who they had no other choice to accept that they're like, that this new person is their mom, right?
Mm-hmm. There are so many nuances to this. So I think that one of the more important things to look at is kind of the expectations around step parenting, and the social expectations around step parenting, and the social expectation that a step parent is supposed to play that same role as a parent. And we're not. That's not the role of a step parent. If it happens organically because that trust is developed and someone and a specific child develop that kind of bond organically, where you just kind of fall into the role as safe person, that's different than thinking you need to contort yourself into that role because that's what the social expectation would be. So the stance that I took when I was a stepmom, and the invitation that I extend to my own clients, is the consideration that these kids have parents. They have a mom, they have a dad, they have two moms, they have two dads, whatever the makeup is, right? Mm-hmm. And so my position as a step parent is not to be another parent. Yes, I am a parent figure, but my responsibilities and my investment of my time and my energy and my money look different because this child already has parents. And so there's a myth and misconception that the value of a step parent equates to the value or the level of closeness that they have with the kids. And there are many ways to be a good step parent without needing to have that kind of organic biological bond. So this is one of the really empowering parts of the work that I get to do with step parents, is saying, well, who do you want to be?
Yeah.
Who do you want? What kind of role do you want to play in this kid's life? Right? What do you want? And for so many parents, that's not a question. You don't get to decide as a parent what kind of role you want to play in somebody's life. You're it, right? You have to do everything because you're the parent. When you're the step parent, you get to say, listen, this is my job description, right? This is one of the things I do with my clients is we create a literal job description based on what are your values, you know? What are your values? What do you feel good about contributing? Let's start there. And then that way there gets to be a container that's opened up for a relationship to develop, because you have to build a brand new relationship with a brand new person. Just because you fall in love with somebody's parent doesn't mean you automatically love their kids. And vice versa. Just because your mom or your dad has a new partner doesn't mean you have to like them, right? And we need to give permission for that reality to be there, because that is the reality.
And I think this goes into the realm of what we were talking about before we started recording, that like you're a contrarian, right? And so I can't help but assume that there'd be a lot of people who would hear that and they would be like, nuh-uh. Like, being a step parent means that you're the parent to that other person's child, right? And so to be able to flip it and to shift the narrative and to say, and to ask, like, who are you to assume that, right? And so this is like kind of, for me to try to grasp in what I'm hearing is you're entering into, first of all, an adult's life, most likely not even knowing that they even have any kids first, right? When you first meet someone, right? And then you learn they have kids. And before the kids are even introduced into the picture, before you even meet them or anything, I'm like trying to find my words here as careful as possible. But there is a choice, right? Like, and this is what I'm hearing is like, you have a choice as a new person in this family's life to have a degree of influence, right? And so, like for me, I love kids, and I have a niece that I have a really strong bond with. And so when I think about being with someone who has kids, naturally I feel inclined to eventually at some point like want to be a part of their life if I'm like getting more and more serious with that person. And so the thing that I would want to like check in with is the appropriateness of it, right? And so that I can't assume that I have the permission until like it's granted, right? If that makes sense. And yeah, I think it's a tricky world to navigate, right? Because I think that's the important thing. It's like, it's not only that, it's also what age is the child? You know, is the child like a full-on teenager and into their later teens? And do they even care, right? Like, they probably aren't going to see their mom's new boyfriend as anything significant, right? Or are the kids like toddlers, you know? And where they probably won't really realize the significance of that new person until, you know, 5 or 6 or 7 years down the line. If that's like, you know, if the relationship goes on for that far. So, that's why, spending more time with you and learning all this stuff has been really fascinating to me. And that's where I think it's, you know, it's honorable. I remember I remember watching this video, and I'm kind of kicking myself that I didn't send it to you. But it was this like older teen boy who went up to his stepdad and with like, you know, like with emotion, asked to be adopted, you know? And it was just so touching, right? After like years of this man being in his life, that like he finally, as like the step kid, like came to a point of realizing and recognizing how significant this man was in his life, that he went as far as when he became like old enough to like create that, like further that bond and that commitment of fatherhood, right? And asking his stepdad to adopt him, you know? And it was just like this beautiful moment of them embracing and crying, and you know, so I think and you know, for me, I'm like 36, and I desire to be in the role of a father. I desire fatherhood. And when I look at men who have taken on the mantle of being a stepfather, there's something so like courageous about it to me. And because like, you know, if we think of ourselves primordially, you know, if we were to go into nature, it's very rare that happens, right? Like you'll watch videos of like, oh, this mother duck and like, you know, adopted some like little ducklings and stuff. But like in nature, it's like, where do you see the male animals like taking that on, right? Like you just don't. Like if anything, they're like extremely violent about it, you know? And so to then jump the evolutionary gap to humans, and then you have this primordial shift in males suddenly like finding the courage in them to take in this child that's not theirs biologically. And then, you know, there's like both sides of the story, right? There are men who do it and like end up being the most abusive piece of shit ever to this like, you know, seemingly like innocent child that isn't theirs, right? But then just like in that example is then you have these men that step up, and it like almost leads more to like mentorship, you know? It's like this father figure is seeing that there's an opportunity to like mentor this child into what they really want, right? So you know, and like I would say the closest example for me would be my music producer John. Like I see him as a father figure and a mentor in music, right? Like specifically the vein of music. And our friendship has gone so far that it went from friendship to mentor to like father figure mentor, where he can say to things about me, he can say things to me about how I'm playing, and it sounds like it's coming from fatherhood, and it's so much more impactful. And I embrace it so much more because I know it's coming from care. It's not coming from this place of like, you fucking suck. Like, you know, it's coming from, hey, I want you and need you to do better. This is how you do better. And it's been a huge blessing, right? And even just speaking it out loud, like right now, I'm having that realization right now, right? And that's what's so amazing about these conversations and doing podcasts like this, is like you can talk things out and you can have like amazing in the moment realizations. And, you know, I don't think I would have had that realization without having this conversation with you, right?
And it's really important, I think, that you kind of identified those 3 stages, right? Where like first you became friends.
Yeah.
First you became friends, right? And then he became a mentor, and then he became like a father figure. And where we try to skip ahead as impatient humans in the step parent role, and as a biological parent who's potentially bringing a new partner into the role of parent, is we want to skip to the end. And it doesn't work like that. And so if I have skipped to the end and I'm saying, right, I want you to do better, who are you to be able to say that?
Yeah.
That develops organically over time through moments and moments and moments of trust, right? Because then that's what we teach. This is what we teach kids, is like it's not just like, oh, you taught me one lesson and now I get to listen to you forever. Yes, like you have taught me everything. It's like, are you there in these moments, that these little tiny moments that add up? Right? And so this experience that you have with John has been that he's been there consistently through all of these little tiny moments.
Yeah.
So that when he finally is like, hey, here's some big feedback, you have an entire history of little moments to pull on to be able to come to this idea of like, oh, this is actually really supportive. Whereas if that whole stack of moments didn't exist and he was like, here's this feedback, you'd be like, well, you're a jerk, right? So, you know, one analogy that I give often is like, we've all probably like worked in a place where somebody new has come in management.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's like, let's use the name John because it's top of mind, right? Like John's here to be the new VP. And it's John's first day and John's got all these great ideas, and undoubtedly they're great ideas, right? But there's a culture here. So if John comes and moves the motherfucking coffee pot to the other side of the office, right? You don't get to do that. We have the coffee pot here for a reason.
Yeah.
So first you have to connect and then you get to correct. You don't just get to come move the coffee pot. You have to connect first. And then you see if you even want to correct, right? We come in as step parents a lot of the time, and I say this because I was one, right? And I work with them. We come in as step parents, we have kind of a bird's eye view of things. And we're like, oh, well, I can see the writing on the wall if these patterns continue. So I'm going to step in and fix this.
Yeah.
Right? And also, we don't understand when we come in as step parents why those patterns exist. We don't have enough of the picture. All we see is what we see from the top through our lens. And if we're coming at that of like, what can this family do for me? Right? And how do I fix this family so that it can serve me and my interests? This is where we have the Cinderella story narrative playing out, right? Because we're kind of trying to come in and control what happens, not because we want what's best for the kids necessarily or the family, right? And this is a human tendency. We all do this. We all do this, whether it's in parenting relationships or work relationships or friendships or whatever. It's just kind of human tendency to sink into this thing of what can these relationships do for me instead of how can I contribute to this relationship?
Yeah, that's powerful. And I like that little statement, like first connect, then correct. And like, even if there is correction that needs to be made, and like often not, because we're messy, you know, mistake ridden humans, there are things to correct. Right. And like you're saying, like to provide the feedback, it does initially take trust, you know? And it's like a conversation that we were having earlier, that trust brings harmony, right? And to assume that you're going to walk into this family, like this family's life as this new person, and then all of a sudden administer all these corrective measures. It's like, how would you ever expect anyone to listen to you? How would you expect anyone to respect you when you're basically showing up like a bulldozer and trying to tear down walls rather than seeing what it takes brick by brick to build something that is safe and is a container for, you know, your partner and the children to like grow and thrive and flourish, right? And that's where I come back to that example of that video of like that boy going up to his stepdad and asking to be adopted, because it's like that it grew to that moment. Like there was growth that was taking place for that child to recognize as like soon to be young adult, that the next stage in their growth together as like soon to be equals as adults is to really deepen the bond of like their stepson and stepfatherhood, right? And yeah, wow. And this is a new topic for me, right? And I think largely why I find it fascinating is because it's something that I've never had to think about, right? And yet I think it's more common than people think. And though it's more common, that because like it's never been in my world, that there's more information about just generally relationships than there is about like what it means to like really strengthen the bonds in step families, because I've heard stories over my life of like how things just turn out terrible, right? And how, you know, whether it's the new girlfriend or new boyfriend, just like totally take advantage of the situation and like, you know, cause abuse and stuff like that, like we kind of touched on earlier. But so you made a shift in your business that, from what I understand, has to do with like an evolution that took place in you, which is the difference between Brittany Lynch and Shakti Jiwan Kaur. So what happened?
Dun, dun, dun.
Yeah.
Okay. So like we've already established, I'm a contrarian. And so, you know, my education background was in nursing. I used to be a registered nurse. And I worked in a lot of brain related fields. I worked in psychiatry and mental health and neurology. And so I really developed this fascination with the brain and the way the brain works. Then I became a step family counselor. And I did things by the book, as most new folks do. And I worked with my clients the way the book said to work with my clients. And I prescribed things that the book says to prescribe in order to help establish step-family relationships. And then I realized that I didn't like the way that it felt to do that. One of the, you know, kind of by the book suggestions is like you help your clients set their family up like a business, where everyone kind of has a predetermined kind of structure and a predetermined role within that structure. And so essentially it was like, if you want your step family to work, then set it up like a business. And then this is what the female head of the household will do. This is what the male head of the household will do. And the kids will kind of fall in line in obedience underneath that. But I mean, I've been practicing yoga for probably close to 15 years. And I've been, you know, studying spirituality for a significant period of time, and on a path of personal development for a significant period of time, where I've come to this realization that everything you have externally as a reflection of who you are internally. In other words, if my life is chaotic and my life is dramatic and my life is painful, it's because I have chaos and drama and pain inside of me. And if I am attempting to manage those things with control measures like establishing female heads of households and male heads of households and running family meetings and telling everybody, everything in its place and a place for everything, I'm not actually dealing with the stuff. I'm just establishing control measures around it to prevent myself from getting triggered. Meanwhile, my world is getting smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller and smaller because everything triggers me. I used to work with a shaman, and he would always say, if you squeeze an orange juice will come out. If you squeeze a lemon juice will come out. If I squeeze you, what will come out? So I realized that this way that I was working with my clients, and specifically I work with stepmoms because we have even kind of a really kind of interesting, I believe in my interpretation, kind of core wound that leads us into stepmotherhood. But what I was realizing was this misalignment between what I knew I was supposed to be doing and what I actually believed in my heart. Right. And that is also like the evolution between Brittany Lynch and Shakti Jiwan, right? Is this is who I think I'm supposed to be socially acceptable, right? But this is who I actually am. And that gap gets harder and harder to ignore. So the shift in my business, I still do the same work. I still work I still work with relationships, except now I don't come at it from a place of this is what the external structure needs to look like in order for you to be successful. Now, since I've stepped into this in my own life where I'm led by my heart and by my intuition, and I trust myself and I love myself, this is the way I live my life. And this is the way now I get to invite my clients to live their own lives, to establish their own homes, not because of control, but because of who they really are and what they really want their life to look like. What do you desire?
Yeah, it's interesting. So it seems like Brittany Lynch, though you're a registered nurse, step-family counselor, that there were other tools that were missing that Shakti Jiwan Kaur introduced. And through this evolution of your identity and this like new sense of yourself, is that it opened up this pathway and opened up this opportunity for you to take on new tools that can be more adaptable and more digestible, and in a way where the level of integration that needs to take place can take place. Like, does that make sense?
The only thing I would adjust on that is that it's not even really about new tools. It's not about doing more or having to change who you are. It's about unwinding from who you think you're supposed to be.
Yeah.
It's the permission to let go of the things you think you're supposed to be doing to be good enough.
And I wonder if that touches on like what we were speaking about earlier, is like you as a step parent, like who you want to be in that role rather than what you're assumed to be, right? As like societal pressures.
Right. Who do you want to be? What role do you want to play in this family? Not what does the role prescribe for you?
Yeah.
Right? If this is the prescription of what it means to be a mother, I'm confined by that. If this is the prescription of what it means to be a father, I'm confined by that. Who gets to decide that?
Yeah.
Right? Who gets to decide that?
Yeah, and it's going to be unique to every situation, right? Like you were saying, like if that child already has like has a set of parents, and there's co-parenting, and the co-parenting is awesome, and then like the father has a new partner, the mother has a new partner, and it's like, then those new partners, there isn't a demand for them to replace the original parents, right? And so like who they want to be in that role is going to be unique in that situation then, right? Mm-hmm. And so say if like there's a situation where there's parents, but say the father dies and it's a single mother, and then she meets someone, and then that's a whole new situation then. That's a whole new dynamic, right? So then like, then is there going to be this kind of like natural demand for the new boyfriend to replace the father? And it might be just subconscious. Like the kids might not even really be fully aware that they're doing it, or that there's like a strong resistance because they don't want this man to replace their father. Right. And like vice versa, if it's a mother that passed away or whatever, or but, that's why like there's definitely a complexity to it then that needs to be appreciated, that you can't just hand a rule book to every family that's generalized and be like, yeah, this is just how you do it. But then in the rule book it's like, well, my unique situation isn't like accounted for here, right? And this is where then I truly see the value in you in your work, because then you're removing the mask of the rule book and you're going, no, this is a unique situation. And as a coach, I'm dealing with each family and each mother, like in this case, like because you're primarily dealing with women, that like you're seeing each one as a unique case. And like, though you may not interact with everybody that listens to you, right? Because you have a successful podcast, you have a growing social media, but you're going to have mothers who come to you specifically, individually, and where you get to really fully spend time with them, right? Through like your coaching program. And I think that's really like so valuable than just going to Chapters and buying a book on step parenting and being like, oh yeah, this will work. And it's like, that's just coming from my naivety and hope, right? Because, if you're a single mother or you're a single father and you're desperate, then you're going to seek out through that desperation and try to find the tools and try to find the information and the knowledge to get a grasp on what's happening. But as good as those books can be, right? Because you're working on a book, and you're going to want people to buy your book, but there's then the next step, right? And so what's the next step?
Well, most people roll up on our virtual doorstep because they have read every book out there. They've read all the books and they've listened to all the podcasts and they've done all the things that the book has said to do, and yet their relationships are still kind of in I don't want to say shambles, but you don't show up at home every day feeling excited to be there. Right? You don't wake up every morning feeling grateful for your family and you're like, I don't think I like this. And we don't obviously have to feel this way every single day. We're people, right? I don't even like myself every single day. So how am I going to like everybody in my household every single day?
Yeah.
But, this kind of pit that sits in our tummy and grows and is like, I think there's more to life than this, right? Like, I don't know, but I don't think this is it. We know that, right? And there's only so long we can ignore that nudge before it starts to really weigh on us and kind of make us sick, right? It can make us sick physically, it can make us sick mentally, it can make us sick emotionally, it makes us sick spiritually. This connection and relationship really, really can affect all of your domains of health and wellness, and creates chronic stress. we as humans evolved to be in community. Our brains are wired to be in community. We evolved to be social creatures. There's been research done that shows that being isolated is just as damaging to your health as smoking a pack of cigarettes every single day. It lowers your life expectancy significantly not to have a supportive community of people. So when you live in a home where you feel disconnected, this goes back to full circle moment of how we began this conversation. Your home is supposed to be this place where you feel held and loved and supported and connected. And when you don't, the impact on that, on yourself and the people you love, is significant. So what is the next step? It's different for every person, right? The question is, how much suffering can you tolerate before you decide to do something different? How much, when is enough enough? And that's going to be a different threshold for everybody. And everybody has a different value metric on the kind of help that they seek out. There are zillions of ways that people can get support, and only you know what that is for you, right? Only you know what that is.
Yeah. And I think that's as much as more than ever now, people want to like bash on social media. I think this is the beautiful thing about social media, is that you can stumble upon this stuff far easier than you can like just kind of randomly out in the world, right? And I think kind of getting to a final point here to wrap this up. I think like what you just said is that you want to have the courage to ask yourself, is enough enough? You know, like, is enough enough? And this might be a little bit vulnerable of a question, but like, where did that show up in your life where you were like, I've had enough of this, and something has to shift and something has to change? And, you know, what fundamentally came out of that for you?
The first time that I kind of took the plunge and worked with a coach, okay, I spent $5,000 on a coach, and I'd never worked with a coach before, right? I'd been to therapy and things, but I knew I needed something different than what conventionally was offered. And I think that there can be a lot of misconception out there about, you know, like, oh, life coaches are overpriced or whatever, or it's not therapy, or it's not covered by my benefits, so I'm not going to do it. And the beautiful thing about coaches is that as a coach, you get to develop your repertoire based on what your heart tells you to do. So if I, for instance, you know, yes, I'm a registered nurse. Yes, I'm a step family counselor. I also have a holistic nutrition training. I'm a mindfulness-based intensive therapist. I have all of these tools in my toolbox because I'm not confined by a regulatory body. I still have a code of ethics that I adhere to, but I'm not confined by a regulatory body about what I am able to support my clients with. right? So I get to support my clients through kundalini yoga practices and mindfulness based interventions and holistic nutrition and science. So I get this opportunity to put together this really unique methodology of how I'm able to support my clients. And so when I took this plunge to work with this first coach of mine ever and paid $5,000 to work with this person, it was a big decision for me, right? Like that was a big decision. And I don't know how many years of therapy I would have had to spend in order to get even close to where I came after only a few months of working with this coach. Because the way that they can package and deliver information, if you find a coach that you resonate with, if you find a methodology that you're like in your body, you're like, I know that this is the one, like I know that this is the way. There's a reason for that, right? And there's a reason that coaches will, I know this is a yoga podcast, I guess I can probably be a little more, I don't have to be so limited with what I'm saying, but if as coaches, we're following our dharma and we're going where we're supposed to be going and training in what we're supposed to be training in, our clients aren't paying us, our clients aren't paying us for what we know. They're paying us for who we are. They want to know how they want proximity to that. They want proximity to the power of authenticity. They want proximity to the power of courage. They want proximity to someone who can be a contrarian and pave their own way and develop their own methodology, because that develops trust. If you can stack all these little moments up and do something so that when I see you, I'm like, oh my God, they get it, right? She gets it. He gets it. They get it. They know something I don't know, right? Then I want to pay to be in that proximity. And by being in that proximity, because of the way that energy goes, you just absorb it. You just become that as well. You are who you surround yourself with. So when I took that plunge, right, I kind of saw the writing on the wall of like, if I don't do this, because what I have done up to this point has gotten me to this point, and this is not a good point, right? This is probably over 10, this is probably 10 years, probably around 10 years ago. Yeah. And the way humans are as well is like, that is not the first coach that I've worked. That's not the first or the last coach that I've worked with, right? It's not just about finding one person that you resonate with and then you're all good. Personal development is a lifelong commitment. Right? Yeah. Evolution is a lifelong commitment. So yeah, I guess it really, we make these decisions all the time, right? I can do what I've always done and I'll get what I've always gotten, or I can choose to do something different that might feel a little bit scary because I've never done it before. The choice is always mine. But we know.
Yeah. And I wonder if that's the intimidating factor of really any kind of self-development. So if it's in the realm of yoga, if it's in the realm of coaching, self-help, that the money part is kind of an excuse. And it's understandable when, you have a budget and, we have soaring prices of everything, right? And you're just you're a human that has naturally limitations on limiting beliefs and whatnot. Of like, oh, I can't afford this thing because I have blah, 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 blah. But then what's the root of it, right? That's what is keeping you in the realm that you're in perpetuating the limiting beliefs, is that there is an intimidating factor of becoming fully your powerful self, fully stepping into the role of what your dharma is and what your purpose is, beyond your Monday to Friday 9-to-5 job, beyond your role as a parent, beyond your role as a student, beyond that. The universe is speaking to each and every single one of us that we have a greater purpose as being a human. And because of the reality that we live in and the systems that build up the cities that we live in and like the world that we're in, money is a huge factor in how we contribute towards really stepping into the fulfillment of who we are as powerful human beings. And so what it can mean to have $5,000 to spend on a program that will be life-changing. And that's the thing. Not could it be, not if, will be life-changing. That you are the determining factor for that life-changing experience. And what it takes to gain the finances is going to be a leap of faith, right? If it's borrowing money, if it's saving money, if it's getting another job, if it's like... those are in the moment exercises to establish how you become more abundant, right? And you have to start where you are. And you're not going to get that by fantasizing about it simply and solely. You're not going to get it from beating yourself up that you don't have it and you need it. It's going to come from, you start where you're at. Okay, I have this job and it pays for all my necessities. It pays for my house, pays for my bills, pays for my food, my gas, my car. And then what I do next to enable myself to take a course, like say a course that Shakti has, is that you're real with yourself and you, okay, you know what, I'm going to go apply for this job and pick up some extra shifts. And it's a sacrifice. You're sacrificing time, like your free time for money, right? So it's like, okay, well, I'm going to work in the evenings or I'm going to work an extra day or two on the weekends. And this is, I think, the thing that people struggle with is because I think the comforts that we have in our world and the frivolousness of our day-to-day living is that we reward ourselves with needless money spending for the tasks that we've done in a day. So we'll go like, oh, I worked a long, hard day, so I'm going to go buy this thing. You know, like, oh, I took care of, my mom's dog for the weekend, so I'm going to go buy, you know what I mean? Like, we're weirdly rewarding ourselves for things where if we were to just remove that and be like, I actually don't need to frivolously reward myself for something, and I have a bigger dream. So I'm going to sacrifice the little meaningless rewards so that I can build up to reward myself with a bigger dream. And that might take 2 years. And it's going to be so much more fulfilling than the freaking tubs of ice cream or the treats or the pizza or the restaurant that you probably have spent $2,000 on in a year. And it's just interesting that like we don't want to have the faculty to think of it that way. That we're going to think of a course that's like, oh, it's $5,000. Oh, I don't have $5,000. It's like, bitch, in a year you spent $3,500, $4,000, $5,000 on so much shit. Mm-hmm. So
the first of all, we always find the money for things that are important to us. Okay. Mm-hmm. Now this statistic is going to blow your freaking brains apart. Okay. Ready for this?
Yeah.
Average cost of a wedding in the United States, $25,000 to $35,000. Okay. One day for a wedding, $25,000 to $35,000. No fucking problem. Right? Need the best dress, need the best cake. We need to have good catering. 25, 30,000, whatever. Okay. Sure. In the grand scheme of things, that's not that much money. Right? Average cost of divorce in the United States, $15,000. So we're at $50,000 roughly for a marriage and a divorce. And would you like to pay $2,000 or $5,000 to invest in your relationship so that you can, not have to pay $15,000 on a divorce, or, for your $35,000 day to be for naught.
Mm-hmm.
I need this wedding dress is there. Oh, I need this honeymoon is there. Oh, maybe I don't have the money for relationship support. I don't have the money for that. Why do we do that? Right? Mm-hmm. Why do we do that? It's not because we don't have the money. And it's not because we don't see the value. Because we know that thing will help us. So this is a question to reflect on. Why do we not do the things that we know we are supposed to be doing that would make us happier? And it's not because we don't have the money, and it's not because we don't have the time, and it's not because we don't see the value.
Interesting. Oh, and I just had a thought. So I wonder if a part of it is like value in yourself. So I'm looking at someone who has a coaching business, and they have this coaching package for $5,000. And because of my limiting beliefs and my own negative self-value, I look at that and I project that onto that person. And I go, that's not worth it. So what am I actually saying? Because if I were to develop that, I would want people to think that what I'm doing is worth it. So I think that's where the shift can happen, where you look at that and you go, you know what? It is worth it because I want to do something that's valuable for people. And so if I see that program has value and I pay into it and I learn everything that I need to learn from it to like better my relationships, better my health with myself, then I create something that magnetizes people into my life to see that what I have to offer has value. And I wonder if that's the hang up there with people. It's because they don't see it in them to have the value to offer something that has like a greater monetary value. And then it's just like this weird self-sabotage, right? And that they're just not seeing it that way. They're actually sabotaging themselves by not doing it.
That's exactly it. That's exactly it. And like what I said earlier, we don't pay coaches and mentors because of what they know. We pay them for who they are.
Yeah.
And anyone who can say, if you want proximity to me, you have to pay me $5,000 US, I want to be around these people.
Yeah.
Right. Because I value myself like that. Right. And I'm like, if you want to talk to me, right, you got to pay to play.
Yeah. Wow.
And not because I'm greedy, right?
No.
Not because I'm greedy, but because it takes a certain quality of personal growth and evolution to be able to value yourself enough not to give yourself away for free. My energy, who I am, I'm too valuable to bleed out for everyone like I used to.
Yeah.
And in a society where we're expected to give everything away for free, right? There's a lot of work that goes into, people see coaches charging $5, $10, $20, $100,000 for coaching packages, and they think that greedy mother effer, right? Yeah. The amount of work that has to go into having the courage to put $100,000 price tag on a coaching package is a lot.
Yeah.
There's a lot of work that had to go in behind those scenes. Right. And all you have to do is ask yourself the question, what could I ask someone to pay me $100,000 for? And if you have this little noodle in your stomach that's like, I could never do that, right? Look at that.
Yeah.
Look at that.
Yeah. And I wonder if that like goes into like a kind of ROI, or like a return of investment, right? Where you're building yourself up so that what you're putting in and investing into that program is because you know that you're going to turn around and get the return, obviously not from that coach, but it's so that the system is being set up so that when you do turn around and you go into the world to offer what you're passionate about, that $100,000 turns into $1 million, right? It turns into $10 million, and that there's this reciprocation of exchange where then it's like each person is kind of like feeding into each other. It's like, yes, I'm going to invest this $5,000 into you because I'm going to learn this program, and then I'm going to have the courage and I'm going to have the support to then go out into the world and create it myself. And then in that year, that $5,000 now just turned into $40,000, and I just generated an income for myself. And
yeah, we're just jumping through their portals.
Yeah.
We're just jumping through portals. We're portal hopping, right? That's it. They're like, here, I made this. And you're like, dope. Let me jump through.
Yeah.
Let me jump through. And this is the way I want to lead my kids.
Yeah.
Right? This is the way I want to lead my kids. I want to lead my kids to follow their hearts. I want to lead my kids to value their time. I want to lead my kids to value their energy. I want to value my kid. I want my kids to see me valuing myself. I want my kids to see me resting. I want my kids to see me loving and being loved and enjoying life and getting lost in a flower for a moment. This is how I want this life for them. So I create it for myself, because kids don't do what we say, they do what we do. So this all ties back into, whether it's relationships or career or work, the same thing as career, whatever. I don't know the words.
Yeah. School.
It all comes back to the amount of love that you have for yourself and the amount of value that you have for yourself. That's it.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
It's my pleasure.
So where can people find you so that they can learn more about what you offer, and where they can follow you, and where they can purchase your coaching packages?
Thank you. So I have a beginner program called the 7 Days to Family Stress Detox. And in less than 10 minutes a day, you can reduce your stress by at least 20%. 10-minute practices, body, mind, and spirit practices. You can just go to stepfamilystressdetox.com to get it. Otherwise, you can find me on Instagram and everywhere at the Step Queen, just like it sounds. And you can find my podcast at The Whole Step Family on your favorite podcast player.
Sweet. Well, thank you. This is great. It's called the Yoga Connection. I call it the Yoga Connection to connect to real world situations, to bridge our daily life with what yoga is, which is unification. And so I hope you enjoyed this episode. Thank you so much for listening. Have a wonderful rest of your day. Enjoy.